Hi, my name is Nick Treefront. I'm an American living in Sweden who works for Abu Garcia as a fishing reel mechanic. Yeah, you heard that right. That is actually my job. Follow me as I take you through some tips and tricks to keep your prized reels running smoothly and avoid nightmares in the water, such as this, and well, this. Welcome to Nick's Tackle Maintenance Workshop. How's it going, guys? In this episode, we're going to take on the Revo Beast, one of the most popular reels that we have out right now. Just an excellent reel. I know a lot of you would probably really want me to cover this one. But if you haven't already seen the episode that we did on the Ambassador, I highly recommend you go back and check that one out. There's some fundamentals in there that are going to really help you when you come and tackle this baby. I want to start out by saying if you have a major problem with your reel that cleaning and lubing doesn't resolve, I recommend you send it into your service department for repair, rather than ordering a bunch of parts and trying to fix it yourself. It'll save you a lot of time and frustration and get you out on the water faster. So we'll disassemble the reel. The side plate comes off. Lay that to the side. Lay the spool to the side. I'm going to remove the handle nut retainer and the handle nut. The handle and the washer that goes underneath it. Your star wheel, that'll come right off. Lay that to the side. Now you've got some spring washers underneath there and a click wheel. One thing with these spring washers is when they're installed, the cupped sides go against each other almost to create something like this, and that's going to give you your spring action on those washers. Something to remember. And then underneath we've got another set of those. And once again, they're going to be installed so that they can do that. Now we're ready to take off our side plate. Three screws on this side. The front is smaller. The other two are slightly larger. So make sure that you kind of set them out in an order that you're easy to put them back in. There's also a screw holding the lube port in, which is also holding the side plate in. Always use caution with this one, as it can strip if you put too much pressure on it. So we'll take that out. Now before this side plate comes off, this lube port has to come out. So I'll apply, put the tweezers in there, and we can pop that out just like that. We set our reel down and gently pull the entire side plate off. I like my tweezers for removing bearings, so I can go right in and pull that out. And the side plate is ready. There's also a bearing up in here. Don't forget to add a drop of grease to that, or a drop of oil to that. So, and then we can remove our springs. I like to take the entire brake packet and wheel off in one piece. And I can also take the coupling wheel and pinion off in one piece as well. Good idea here, just to take it one step further, disassembly, is to remove your handle bushing. So we can just pull that right out. The tweezers really come in handy here with these small screws. What I see sometimes with this is if you've gotten water inside your reel, it'll gather here and create kind of this milky oil water mixture, and will eventually rust out and seize this bearing. So it's a good idea to take this out, really dry it off really good, and dry off down inside of that area as well. I mean, you could even see here some nasty old grease in there. So really work hard to remove all the old grease and oil from your reel. That's where this precision degreaser really comes in handy. A quick spray of that And you can really go through and just dry it right out. Removes it all right away. It's a great product to have. Dry it off really good here. Make sure you get it all dried off as well, though. We don't want it in the reel afterwards. Now here with the coupling mechanism, I don't recommend that the typical person take this apart. It is a pain. It can be a pain to put back together if you don't know what you're doing. So what I would instead recommend everyone do is you can just loosen these screws without taking them out all the way out. Loosen everything enough to where you get a little bit of play on this plate here. Because what this is doing, this plate is actually holding these coupling ramps and this kick arm down in place. So then from here, we can get access on the side and use a little gravity and the little space that we got to let some oil run down underneath that and really lube that in. Easy way to do that without having to deal with mounting and demounting all of these springs and taking this the thumb bar off and everything else. So from here we can easily access the worm gear. Once again, probably easier not to remove it. Just get it as clean as you can from here. If it's really dirty, you're probably not going to avoid not removing it, in which case we're going to pull this off, pull our pawl out, remove this ring here, and you can pull the whole thing out, disassemble it, clean it really good. But if you stay up on your maintenance, you're probably not going to need to do that. What you can do is from here, rub it and spin it and clean out that worm gear pretty well from here. You want to get as much dirt and grime and everything else out of that. And so I'll then put a drop of oil. There's a bearing here and a bearing here, so I want a drop of oil on each of those. Also, the pawl runs down through a tube here. I want some oil on the down through this hole on the outside of that pawl, so that as it comes around, it can turn. Because as it's coming this way, it's like this, but then when it comes back around, it's going to shift. So we want that to be able to shift back and forth inside of that cylinder. Next thing I want to do is I want light amounts of grease on this. It's going to protect it a little bit. Allow that pawl to move freely up inside of there. I'm going to thin it out just a little bit by adding some oil on top of it, and then I'll just spin it back around and around and around and let it all work itself in. I don't like too much grease in here because it attracts dirt, and if you get dirt in here, you're going to damage the parts. Next thing, I want a drop of oil right on top of this kick arm and work it down inside of the kick arm. It's really important that this spins freely. If you get too much dirt and grease and everything underneath here or inside of there, it's gonna want to stick. And if that sticks, what's going to happen is when you turn your handle to engage the retrieval mechanism, to engage your pinion to your spool, you turn the handle, this is going to turn, but it's not going to catch. So really make sure that this is snapping forward easily there. So next thing you want to do, make sure that this is nice and clean. Get all the dirt, grease. You can check the condition of the bearing. Now when I'm checking bearings, what I want to do is I run it really lightly over my finger, and I'm just feeling for any kind of gravelly, bumpy, anything that's not silky smooth. Usually is going to indicate a bad bearing. So I'll reinstall that. And grab these little screws to go with it. Make sure those are tight as well. Good. Now we got a little stopper. There's a little backup anti-reverse that goes on this coupling wheel. I'm going to slide that back down in. Add a drop of oil to where it attaches to the reel. Make sure it can move back and forth easily. Now it's slotted, so we want to make sure it fits down inside of the slots there. Move forward and back. Check the function of it. Now we can attack our main gear and drag. Lay everything out as it came apart. Very important. Got one more down inside of there. I want to take everything out so I can be sure that it's all nice and clean and dry. So dry out the inside of this. I'll dry out my main gear really good. And one thing that I like to do with the main gear to remove all the dirt and from in between these is I'll take my rag and my fingernail and I'll just work it in to all those parts. And what you'll see is you can see that I'm starting to take out dirt and old lube, which is the goal of this service. Once you get that completely cleaned all the way around, you can reassemble. So I will do the same with the pinion gear. Make sure I've removed all the old oil and dirt from it, and here is a great time to spray it off with a little degreaser and rub it out. And same here, a little degreaser. It's a great product, works really well for cleaning reel parts. But make sure you get it all off. We don't want it mixing with the grease that we put back on. So, there we go. I like a little bit of oil on this part. And I like a little bit of oil on these posts. So this pinion carrier can slide up and down really freely. There's a small washer that goes underneath the main gear. As with all gears, we're going to apply grease to them. We want to grease the gears. So go around and get a good line of grease on there. Just make sure you work the grease in between the teeth of the gear. We don't want it building up on the sides, but we just want to completely fill the inner spaces of the teeth of that gear. And it's enough to do your main gear. You don't have to go through and do your pinion as well. All right. Then we can install it right back down and reinstall our brake packet just as it came out. Make sure these are nice and dry and not greasy, because that will affect your braking ability. And then there's two springs that go over this pinion carrier. You want to make sure that they're sitting straight up and down. And now we're ready to reinstall. So what we want to do here is use our soft cloth to really clean the outside of it. You can remove a lot of the dirt from it that way. Also, I want to put a drop of oil right there on that. That's a bearing. It goes on top of our pinion gear here. So with that instant and a reverse bearing, what I like to do is take my rag, twist it up, and work it through the middle of it. Pull it tight, and then I can work the reel around and really work all those little needle bearings around and remove all the dirt and grease from it. Once I get it nice and clean, I'm ready to lube it again. I'll put a drop of grease, just a drop. I don't want too much grease on there. Over lubing this will cause it to fail. And then I want a drop of oil as well, just to thin out that grease a little bit. Then I'll take the handle of my paintbrush or even my screwdriver and I'll work it around So I'm totally coating all those needle bearings. We want them lubed, but if they're over lubed, they will fail. They get too sloppy and they can't sit themselves back into place properly. So we'll take our IAR bearing or bushing, throw it back down. Now, when you're reinstalling the side plate on these Beast reels, use caution. I've seen people that they get these a little bit sideways and then they go to put it back down and they pinch these springs. We want these springs to be straight up and down. And then I can take my side plate and put it straight down onto there to make sure that those springs are seated properly. Holding it down, I can throw a screw in there just to hold everything in place. And then the rest of the screws can be installed. And we'll go through and reinstall our lube port. Really cautious with this. Do not put too much torque on this, as this can strip. So just snug tight, don't over torque it. Now we're ready to reinstall our bearing. Dry it off really good and we'll give it a test. I'll show you how to test bearings. A quick way to test bearings, put it in your tweezers and run it back and forth. You should get a nice smooth, silky smooth action. Any kind of bumps or gravelly feeling is going to indicate a noisy bearing, and probably a bearing that's going to need to be replaced. There's a little washer that goes down in there. And then we can put our bearing. Once again, these spring washers, we want them going against each other. So cupping against each other like so. And we'll pop it right in. Now our click mechanism for our star wheel will go on. Takes a little pressure. Another set of spring washers, once again, against each other. Now, here, really important, I want to make sure that these threads are all really clean, and I want to apply, once they're clean really well, I want to apply grease to them. Both sides. This is one of those instances where you can go a little overboard with the grease, at least enough to where it can build up a little bit of grease down in here, because what this is doing is it's lubing these threads, which have a lot of pressure on them when you have your drag fully set. Also, if you build up a little extra, it creates a barrier where it makes it harder for water to get into your reel. So not a bad thing to have a little extra grease here. It's not really going to affect the performance of the reel other than protect it. So reverse threaded, I like to hold the star wheel down with my finger, and then with a left-handed reel you're going to be going with a reverse action. Hold the top and go until you hear it start to click. Oh, there we go. It's a small washer that goes under the handle. And there's the handle. Once again, reverse threaded. We're going to put that. I like to look down the side of it to make sure I'm not cross-threading it. I've seen people cross-thread these a lot. Get her nice and snug. Not over snug, just snug so your handle doesn't move. And then you can throw your lock ring on there. A little bit of adjustment to get the screw to line up. Off we go. Now, a note on the spool. Once again, 1 drop of oil on this, no more. Any more, you're going to get a noisy bearing. So 1 drop of oil is plenty. Less is more when it comes to oil. Also going to put a little bit of oil on this axle because the pinion gear is going to be sliding up and down on that. And then I can mount it inside of the reel, just like that. Now, With the Revo Beast, we have a 3-part cast control system. Something to look at when you're servicing your reel. So the first is just a friction control. What this is going to do is going to apply pressure to the axle and slow the spin to keep overruns from happening. That's kind of your master cast control there. Secondary system is these centrifugal brakes that as the spool is spinning very quickly, they're going to come out and come in contact with this ring here. And as your spool spins fast, they'll come out and create friction that will slow the spin of the spool. So what you can do is you can set them in or out depending on how much you need, depending on how heavy and the casting conditions for the day are. How heavy your lure is, I should say. So what we want to think about when we come to servicing this is I want 1 drop of oil down on each of those. I do not want excess oil that's going to run out and build up on here, because that's going to really slow down your spool more than you want. Just enough to where they will come in and out easily. So I'll go through and put 1 drop of oil on each one. Then I can install there. The other system, the third system on this, is the magnetic system. So we got magnetic brakes here and a control knob here. So what they do is when the brakes are at minimum, the magnets are the farthest away from the spool, and at max, they come out towards the spool. So you can see them go back and forth that way. The magnets exert a magnetic force on the spool, slowing it down. So there's 3 systems on there. There's not much you need to do as far as servicing this side of it, except for drying it off, drying it out here, add a drop of oil to the bearing here, and just ensure that you're getting a good up and down motion on there. You can work it back and forth a little bit. Other than that, there's not much that needs to be done there. Then we can reinstall our side plate, click it into place, and reverse the steps of our diagnostic process we started in the beginning. You notice a much smoother, quieter reel after a quick lube, especially after you've removed all that dirt and oil from the inside. Hope that helps.